Earlier this year, Reeb announced the return of the Sam's Pants, their long-standing drop bar bike, and I've been testing it over the past month on everything from short day rides to long day rides and bike packing trips, putting in over 300 miles. And in this video, I'm going to share all of my thoughts on the revamped Sam's Pants. Let's do it. All right, so real quick though, we are outside, obviously, in the elements. Clouds are coming in and out. We got a ton of rain last night. I didn't anticipate it being, well, this kind of variable, so please bear with me with the picture. Obviously, though, I do have some B-roll that I will be putting over some really dark spots in this video, so just, yeah, be forewarned there. But obviously, it's best to be outside than in the garage, because I'm going to be stuck in the garage all winter, and we don't want that. So, yeah, it's fall here in Gunny. It's quite beautiful right now. All right, so if you haven't heard of, well, the Sam's Pants, it's Reeb's longest running bike model, actually. It was first introduced back in 2012, originally kind of conceived as a do-everything bike for Oscar Blues Brewing employees. So the goal here was actually to build a versatile ride that actually could do it all. Monster cross, commuter, cruiser, gravel rides, even a single track Slayer. Yeah. So over the years, it's actually been built up in all sorts of variations. Now, the name actually is a little funny here. It comes from a local shop kid named Sam, go figure, who was actually known for introducing skinny jean drop bar aesthetics to the Reeb cycling crew. So when they actually launched their first gravel drop bar bike, they cheekily named it after Sam. So a few years later in 2015, the Sam's Pants gained extra notoriety, at least in the whole bike packing world, when Joe Grant lined up at the Colorado Trail Race start and actually became one of only a few riders here who have ever finished that race on a drop bar rig. And he might actually be the fastest, I don't know. But he ended up securing a time of 5 days, 7 hours, and 31 minutes on a Sam's Pants drop bar rig, which is pretty impressive. Then in 2019, Reeb updated the Sam's Pants for the 2020 calendar year. The new version featured clearance for 29 by 2.1 inch tires, a 73 millimeter bottom bracket shell, Paragon Machine Works dropouts, and a 44 millimeter head tube, and a third set of bottle bosses on the underneath side of the down tube. And you also had a 31.6 millimeter seat tube to fit modern dropper posts, at least those modern dropper posts at the time. So as Reeb Cycles enters its 15th year of making and building steel bikes, they decided, well, to bring back the Sam's Pants after a few-year hiatus. This time with a focus on kind of modernizing its gravel drop bar rig. And I would have to say, they've done just that with some very thoughtful updates. So before we get into those updates, I do want to take a quick moment to let you all know that this video is supported in part by Coros, the brand behind the Coros Dura Solar GPS bike computer. So the Dura is a head unit that you might have seen in some of our videos, and for good reason. It offers an impressive 120 hours of battery life on a single charge. In fact, I only had to charge mine once over a 6-month period. And if that wasn't enough, well, it features highly efficient solar panels on top, which make a noticeable difference in sunny conditions. With simple controls and intuitive navigation, it's perfect for bike packing or day rides of any length. So to learn a little bit more about this award-winning cycling head unit, you can click on the card in the top right corner here, or else follow the link in the description below. All right, so like all Reeb bikes, the Sam's Pants is, well, it's designed and hand-built right in Lyons, Colorado. So this particular frame actually uses a Columbus Zona tube set, which is a double and triple butted seamless steel that feels like a perfect match for this particular build, but of course more on that soon. So the frame is actually built around a 420 millimeter axle to crown to accommodate obviously those modern gravel suspension forks that have become very popular on the market. So the new Sam's Pants features a fixed UDH dropout, a 44mm head tube, and a 68mm threaded bottom bracket. It's got 142 by 12mm rear spacing, flat mount brakes, internal dropper post routing, and external brake and shifter routing, and it accepts a 27.2mm seat post, and it also has clearance for up to 2.2-inch tires. Plenty of room for those chunkers, which is always great. The bike is built for 1x specific drivetrain and maxes out with a 42-tooth front chainring. And like most Reebs, it comes in some beautiful color options, 6 to be exact here. And this is the Ka-Chow color I tested. It is pretty understated at first glance, especially maybe in the shade, but once the light hits it in the right spot, that subtle sparkle really comes alive. I absolutely love this color. So the new Sam's Pants comes in 5 sizes, from extra small to extra large. I was right in the middle at the medium, and at 5'9½", it actually fits me really well. So Reeb lists the medium for riders between 5'7" and 5'10", and it comes in with a 573mm effective top tube. You've got a 400mm reach and a 576mm stack. So for comparison, that's roughly the same stack as the previous Sam's Pants, but with a longer reach. It also has a bit of a longer reach and slightly lower stack than the Otzo Warrican, another bike I really enjoyed, though they are very much two different beasts. Geometry-wise, it's actually very close to my Santa Cruz Stigmata, which has a 576mm stack and a 405mm reach, so just 5 more millimeters than the Sam's Pants. So the riding position strikes a really nice balance here, not overly upright or overly aggressive, but it puts you in the bike just enough to kind of stay comfortable on gravel and pavement while certainly feeling very capable and confident on terrain that gets a little bit more hairy. Now, diving into some angles here, the bike comes with a 70-degree head tube angle, which actually is unchanged from the previous iteration. The bike, however, does have a slightly steeper seat tube angle at 73.5 degrees, and that's, well, mainly because or a result of the longer front center, which has actually increased by 16 millimeters from 621 to 637 millimeters. So that steeper seat tube angle kind of helps your weight, or you center your weight over the bike on all types of terrain, flat, descents, and climbs. And I felt really kind of balanced even on some of those steepest pitches. So the chainstays come in at 435 millimeters, which is fairly standard for a bike of this category, and contributes to a total wheelbase of 1,061 millimeters. So the bottom bracket drop is 75 millimeters, so slightly higher than something like, say, the Santa Cruz Stigmata, but with the larger tires, it actually feels kind of appropriate, and I never actually felt like it took away from the bike's kind of stability. If anything, it made it more friendly on single track. So I did experience a tiny bit of toe overlap on this bike on the medium frame here, but that's largely due to my setup. So I've got a relatively large foot for my height, and I actually run my cleats pushed all the way back to minimize my Achilles movement, which I've had issues with in the past. So this actually pushes my toe a little bit more forward. It's a bit of an odd setup for most folks with, I'd say, average proportions. Toe overlap shouldn't be an issue, but even for me, it never actually hindered my riding the way I'd say the Surly Straggler geometry did. And stepping off the bike, I actually never felt like I had any issues with standover. I had plenty of standover height. The medium comes with a 787mm standover, which is just shy of 31 inches, and my inseam is 32 plus inches. All right, so all of that said, I would definitely consider this as progressive geometry, something that's certainly more in line with the Stigmata than a more traditional layout of a bike like the Otzo Warrican. But what does progressive gravel geometry really mean when it comes to ride quality? As I mentioned in the introduction, I didn't have a lot of time on this bike, but, well, I certainly made the most of it. I just couldn't actually bring myself to ride anything else. I simply loved the way it rode. It's extremely efficient and motivated me to get out the door and ride farther than I normally would. And it does so with a bit of more conviction than some other gravel bikes that I've tested recently. It's got that rare versatility that you can, well, spin along gravel roads and then dive straight into some single track without really skipping a beat. And I think that has a lot to do with, well, the geometry and how they managed to fit 2.2-inch tire clearance into this frame. So we've seen more and more bikes like this, kind of embracing that larger tire clearance. And while it might not accelerate quite as quick as my Santa Cruz Stigmata with its 435 millimeter chainstays here compared to the Stigmata's 423 millimeter, the trade-off is worth it. The Stigmata feels a bit limited in clearance. Even 50 millimeter tire clearance starts to feel tight once mud starts to come into play, especially the peanut butter mud that we get around here. But the Sam's Pants isn't slow by any means. From the geometry to the Zona tube set and, well, that overall construction, it just feels super dialed. And when pedaling hard uphill or out of the saddle, the bike kind of stays solid. No unwanted flex, side to side flex. And that lateral stiffness certainly gives it a dependable and connected feel that translates into, well, those higher average speeds that I've been experiencing. And it really is a confidence inspiring ride that, well, pushes me up hills with urgency. It's like a magnet. I'm just like, I can't explain it other than that, all right? So when things started to trend downhill, it certainly stayed composed. So that longer wheelbase obviously helps. But what really stood out was actually the overall comfort of the frame. So at higher speeds, it actually feels really planted and predictable through those corners. But when I hit rougher sections or chunkier terrain, I felt like the Zona tube set offered a, I guess, surprising to me for some reason, amount of vertical compliance. Loaded or unloaded, I never actually felt like it was flexy, just the right amount of give. And on washboards or small chatter, it actually soaked up vibrations impressively well too. I actually have a distinct memory of riding the same route on both bikes, but coming away on the Stigmata feeling a little bit more beat up, which is funny considering, I guess, carbon usually does a great job of damping, maybe better than steel, but that's open for debate. But the Sam's Pants might do it even better, and sure, the 2.1-inch mezcals probably help here, but I really do think the Zona tube set plays a big role here. Or perhaps maybe my mind was comparing it to the new Surly Straggler, which certainly had less inspiring geometry and tubing. Speaking of comfort, I'd say it handled a bike packing load extremely well. So it never felt soft or noodly, but instead kept that same lively feel. And adding that weight actually made the bike feel even more grounded. It usually does, but especially in corners or on descents where that extra stability was certainly welcome. So I ended up finding a frame bag in my pile of bags that I have that fit perfectly, and then I loaded it up and went on a trip to peep some golden aspens. And I packed that frame bag with a bunch of water and loads of gear inside the main triangle, and it really brought kind of that frame to life. The bike also comes with a rear rack and fender mounts, plus 3 bottle mounts. You've got 2 inside the main triangle, as you can see here, and then you've got 1 on the down tube. So all of them were thoroughly used and appreciated during my test period. All right, one small detail that I really like is how low the rack and fender mount is on or near the dropout. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine when mounts are kind of placed a little bit higher, say up on, the higher up on the seat stay, because it raises the weight and kind of throws off the balance, not to mention kind of makes the rig look a little unattractive. So I test a lot of racks and setups, so it's not always kind of a deal breaker, but for me, the lower the mounts are, well, the better they are. You! Oh my gosh, these crows are having a blast. It's like party central over here. Love nature, right? You can't see that, but I did, and that was pretty cool. Sun feels good. Stay out here, son. We'd like to have you a little bit longer. All right, so the lithic carbon fork down here that Reeb spec'd on this bike also comes with cargo mounts, giving riders plenty of options for gear, or in my case, I used it for extra water storage. And as I mentioned earlier, the external routing on this frame is, well, it's refreshing to see. It's easy to work with. And thanks to the clean guides along the down tube, it's simple, but a very thoughtful and practical touch that could come in handy, who knows, down the road. at the very least, it's going to be super easy for you to service this frame. All right, so Reeb offers 3 different build options here. You've got the Apex XPLR Access gravel build, the Apex GX Access Adventure build, which is the one I tested here, and then you've got a high-end red XPLR 13-speed gravel build. Surprisingly, there are no mechanical options within those 3 builds, which seems a little odd, but you can always grab a frame set, which they also offer, and build it up however you would like. After looking through all of the builds, I would say that the one I tested makes the most sense here, primarily because of the gearing, I would say, and obviously, well, it comes with larger tires, but the gearing comes with a 12-speed 10x52 cassette, a GX derailleur, Apex cranks with a 40-tooth ring, and Apex brake and shifter levers. It gave me plenty of range, and well, it just worked. And I really like the Apex levers. The upper portion is kind of wide enough that offers really good ergonomics. Just you could hold it a little differently. And in the drops, I did have to adjust the lever throw, but once I did, braking on kind of the rough stuff at higher speeds felt much more natural. And actually, the brakes themselves have really nice bite, maybe some of the best SRAM brakes that I've felt in a really long time. So when I unpacked the bike out of the box, I was actually very surprised at how narrow or small the handlebars were. So at first glance, I loved the build, but I wasn't thrilled about the 42 centimeter Zip Service Course 70 XPLR bars paired with an 80 millimeter stem here. I assumed the front end would kind of feel, I don't know, too compact and uninspiring, but I actually was wrong here. Sure, I'd say a wider bar makes a lot of sense, especially when you're packing, cargo between the levers and the bars. But I think my obsession with super wide bars might be, well, it's slowly fading. Narrower setups are growing on me. And in fact, the riding position on this bike felt more adaptable. I can actually hunch over and kind of get in an aero position when I've got a headwind, or stay more upright for, those long, just easy miles. Funny enough, those 42 centimeter bars went from being one of my least favorite things on the bike to, well, a non-issue at the end of my test period. That all said, I wouldn't hate a larger bar for nothing less than just more cargo space between the hoods, but I did end up using the tail fin bar bag system, which really does a really great job of kind of tugging together your load, so I didn't have any rubbing, so that worked great. But one thing I could have done without was this super loud Hunt rear hub here. So the bike comes with Hunt 4-season gravel wheels featuring their 36-tooth H ratchet system. Although it doesn't have the best engagement, I don't really mind that too much on a gravel bike. However, I just could not get over the, dare I say, it kind of felt like a cheap sounding hub, right? If I had more time, I would have just put some free hub grease in to quiet it down. It was literally loud enough that when I passed people, I just had to kind of keep pedaling softly so the buzz wouldn't bother them. That's how kind of embarrassing this hub sound is. So rounding out the rest of the build, the Zip rigid seat post right here, it was fine. It worked, but I swapped it out a week into my test period for a RockShox Reverb Access 27.2 post that normally lives on another bike. And that was a massive upgrade, especially on rougher terrain. It hands down, I would say it's the number one thing that I would change on this bike, as it does just simply give me more confidence. And I think it's actually just a safer overall way to ride this bike. And lastly, the tires. I've always liked Vittoria Mezcals for gravel roads, and the 2.1 version is certainly no different. It rolls fast, grips decently well on the sides, and well, gives the bike a nice planted and capable feel. Anytime you can fit this much volume on a gravel bike, it's going to be inspiring. And in a sea of tire options, the Mezcal certainly remains one of the most versatile and inspiring choices out there. So anything I'd change? Well, of course, I'd like to include this segment in my reviews because it kind of raises the question about the perfect bike and how in reality there is no such thing, right? That all said, the Sam's Pants is no slouch. It's not kind of reinventing the wheel or progressive geometry gravel bike, but they built on what they had in their previous version, which I would admit was already pretty great, but they really did a great job of making it more capable. It is, however, interesting to see these drop bar bikes come full circle, right? So you've got drop bar mountain bikes, which really have been around since, I don't know, Salsa Fargo maybe back in 2008. Many modern gravel bikes are now kind of flirting with similar tire clearance here. While the 2.2-inch tire clearance on this bike, it is solid. It's definitely on the tighter side when you look down and see the tire pretty close to that drive side chainstay. And when you start to kind of think about frames with wider bottom bracket shells and axle spacing, it's not a far-fetched idea to imagine a gravel bike that could handle a 2.4-inch tire. So a route like the Great Divide mountain bike route, or a race like the Tour Divide, for example, really benefits from a 2.2 plus inch tire because you want a little bit of extra mud clearance. But whether people want 2.2 plus inch tire clearance on a gravel bike or just want to go with a tried and true drop bar mountain bike, I guess that's all open for debate. But by pushing the limits with tire clearance here, it kind of has me wanting more. All right, so I'd also love to see a steel fork option from Reeb. I know carbon has kind of become the standard here. It's lighter. It's one less thing that small builders have to produce, but a matching steel fork would, well, it would look and ride great on this bike. And I've said the same thing with the Otso Warrican last year, and I certainly think the Sam's Pants could benefit from that as well. Finally, I would love to see top tube mounts on the bike for a direct mount top tube bag, and even maybe a few mounts underneath for a direct mount frame bag would be nice. And I know some folks would also like to see the sliding dropouts. Those actually aren't very cheap, so that would certainly increase the cost. A mechanical build option would also be a great option too for riders who prefer to skip the batteries. Then again, Reeb here is, well, they're a relatively small company, and I'm sure they'd be open to working with you on all of those things and a custom build if that is what you are after. So when we talk about gravel bikes, it's fair to say that, well, the market, it's pretty saturated. And maybe that's why Reeb decided to kind of keep the initial run of these bikes rather limited. But I guess in the big picture here, finding a bike like this isn't all that common. Sure, you can find bits and pieces of what the Sam's Pants offers on other bikes, but it's rare to find them all in one package. It's got tire clearance well beyond 50 millimeters, which makes for a much more capable and enjoyable ride. The geometry is, well, certainly more inspiring than that of, say, traditional gravel bike geometry, without any real sacrifices in efficiency or comfort, in my opinion. It's made from steel, which we all know it stands the test of time, and it doesn't, well, discriminate against single track, which I really like. It climbs efficiently, it feels comfortable on descents, and, well, just wants to keep rolling. A bike like that tends to be the perfect adventure companion, and I definitely had some fantastic rides on it, and it's going to be really sad to actually send this one back. So the Reeb Sam's Pants, the adventure build that I tested, comes in at $4,799 USD and a reasonable 22 pounds, 14 ounces, while the Apex gravel build is $4,599 USD, and the red gravel build tops out at $8,499 USD. And if you're more of a custom builder, Reeb certainly offers the frame set either with a lithic fork for $2,149 or a Cane Creek invert fork option for $2,399 USD. All right, so the Sam's Pants. I keep wanting to say the Sam Pant or the Sam's Pant or the Pant Sam. Either way, it's a great bike. But what do you all think about it? Please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. It really does go a long way in helping support this channel. And if you want to help support us a little bit further, you can do so by joining the Bikepacking Collective. The Collective offers a lot of awesome perks, including industry discounts, monthly giveaways to the twice yearly Bikepacking Journal, and the all-new Base Camp, where you can sell things and get advice and set up meetup times with folks to bike pack or just day rides. It's really great. So to learn a little bit more about the Collective, you can click on the card in the top right corner here, or else follow the link in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, pedal further.